You're listening to the West Tech Podcast, powered by West Recruitment.
Let's go! Yes, check the West Tech Podcast. Let's get the next guest on fast. Yes, check the West Tech Podcast. Let's get the next guest on fast.
It's a specialist recruitment that you chose the best. There's been evidence to prove it because they know the West. From the map of Parramatta, that's their home address. It's a platform where you chat about your own success. To keep a promise is a must. Speaking honest, keeping trust. Being modest, we discuss. People want it, we adjust. It's all genuine, real, share and then feel. West Tech connects, respects ideals.
You need the right team, the right piece, and we can find leads like these. We keep it timely and high speed. Keep up with IT and life's needs. So if it's candid conversation, we're to chat, or expanded information to unpack. The brand is contemplation, it's a fact. At West Tech can tell you where it's at. Let's go! Yes, check the West Tech Podcast. Let's get the next guest on fast. Yes, check the West Tech Podcast. Let's get the next guest on fast. Yes, check the West Tech Podcast. Let's get the next guest on fast. Yes, check the West Tech Podcast. Let's get the next guest on fast.
Today we sit down with Sid Jolapara, who's out of AWS, and we're going to talk all things cloud spend and his career journey, which includes a stint with Woolworths, the music industry and chartered firms, so very, very different industries. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
Check the West Tech Podcast.
Welcome back to the West Tech Podcast. Today we're sitting here with Sid Jolapara, who's out of AWS. Sid's got a really, really interesting background. He is bilingual. He does speak technology as well as accounting and finance, being a qualified chartered accountant. So we're going to talk about his career journey to date, what he's doing with AWS, and obviously the industry is cloud computing and where that's headed. So hopefully you enjoy his story and some of the hints and tips he's happy to share. Sid, we've known each other for quite a while and back to our finance days, but you're not your average accountant. Mate, thank you for joining us on the West Tech Podcast.
No, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Excellent, mate. Excellent. So I sort of alluded to you're not your average accountant, and we're not here to really talk about finance today because you work for AWS. But mate, your background's actually very, very interesting. Qualified chartered accountant, started your life in the cut and thrust of the chartered world. Obviously transitioned out of that, and you're a long, long way from there, mate. Tell us a bit about that career journey.
Yeah, I actually started my career back as a cadet, so straight out of high school. I got the cadetship, which was a game changer for me back then. It was quite interesting because that's when the GFC just hit in 2008. So then we're in a position that I actually had a job, which was a really good place to be. So I kicked off my career doing your normal business services, doing a bit of audits, tax, etc.
Exciting stuff.
And I realised maybe that isn't actually for me. But in saying that, the foundations that you learned there were amazing. So actual accounting nuances and starting as a cadet was really valuable because, yes, you're doing a lot of the low value, low level stuff, but you learn the foundation, the fundamentals of exactly how it works. So
it's direct, really cool. Directly transfers into business too. Is something you don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. And what was really cool about it is at that young age, I was able to get in front of clients and actually speak to clients and build up that ability, right? Because it's not a normal thing to do, is go talk to customers and have that sort of conversation.
It's pretty daunting.
Yeah.
In your early 20s, talking to people that are pretty accomplished in the corporate world, and you're just starting out with pupils.
Well, I always found it really funny is, daunting is the right word, because you'd go in as let's say you're auditing someone, and this customer or this finance person's been doing it for years, and this 20-year-old comes in and is checking your work and stuff. I always felt like, I'm not sure if I'm in the right position here.
I'd imagine people might be a bit defensive or a bit dismissive potentially.
Yeah. And it's why auditors may sometimes not have the best name, but you're there to try and help the business, obviously.
Yep.
And having that conversation and getting customers to understand that was just a really good learning opportunity for me.
Was that what you wanted to do when you left school? It was always going to be accounting. I was good at maths, I'll just jump into accounting, or what other options?
No, it actually really relates well to what I'm doing now. I was always into tech. So technology, growing up in that era where you could just, it's kind of the wild west of the internet, right? And you could just build a website, just jump on and you had those gifts saying under construction, and it was just kind of, the internet was new, and so I always wanted to be in tech. And I remember talking to my dad, and I'm like, I want to be in tech. I don't know, etc. But I really enjoy finance, whatnot. And he said something to me which was really interesting. He goes, "Oh, go be a chef." Why would I do that? It's like, well, the world will always need chefs. Like, you will always need to cook. You will always need food, etc. And it got me thinking of, okay, what will, not a safe option, but what is a skill set that is so valuable, that is, again, the foundation of a lot of other roles. And finance stepped up. And you look at a lot of CEOs and COOs and the leaders, and I did that exercise back in high school. They all have a finance degree, or a lot of them do. So I thought, okay, I'd love to actually go down that finance path. And it kind of got me to this finance tech intersection that I'm at now. So it's actually worked out really well.
And it's very interesting, because even 10, 15 years ago, people in technology didn't necessarily have a direct or a clear pathway where they'd become CEOs unless it was in a tech or an IT business.
Yeah.
And I think that's all changing now. We're seeing more CIOs on exec leadership teams, and people and businesses, especially the more progressive ones, have identified that to move ahead, you do need to have technology underpin whatever the strategy is.
Yeah.
And I think that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's become the new finance, really. And
it has, exactly. And the way I think about technology is in relation to that. The first piece of tech is nice to have. It's optional. Then it becomes important. Then it becomes a necessity. You can't operate without it. The iPhone's a great example. When it first came out, businesses were like, no, you can't bring an iPhone into the company and connect it to our network and all that sort of, you can't have emails running on here. To now bring your
tool
own
of trade.
It's your phone, just connect it onto here. And it changes so rapidly.
I think it's the same as like when you had the internet, your ISP bill is now a utility.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not, it's paid like no different water or electricity. It's not like you're going to have a house without the internet. So, so you've gone from being in the chartered world.
Yeah, and so I decided to move, and I always think of finance as a doctor to a business. Like, I think that's what we are. We can't run the business. There are salespeople that do that. There's obviously the engineers. There's people that actually do. I think one of the cool things about finance is you see it and you actually understand if something happens here in the business, what will happen over there. And so I was thinking, okay, if I'm a doctor to a business, I want to work with sick patients instead of healthy ones, right? To actually make a difference. And doing taxes and audit and stuff, it was that yearly rolling forward files. This is what they did last year and stuff. It just wasn't for me. So I started looking for industries and roles that appealed to me from that helping a business actually going through certain tough periods of time, etc. And I landed myself in the music industry, right when piracy was obviously at its peak. Streaming was starting to make a hit. Digital music, obviously through iTunes, was big. So it's just like a cool industry where it had not been affected for so long, and then suddenly
massive disruptions.
And so I joined the music industry as a finance, commercial finance strategist, I think, which was just one of the coolest jobs I think I've ever had in my career.
I can imagine going from a chartered firm where everything's very conservative,
a
bit dry, very serious, to the music where you're dealing with like creatives. You know, again, there's such a lifestyle associated with that as well. That you know, I would imagine the culture would be just almost.
I think that, let's say, the last week of my role in chartered, I was sitting in front of customers with a suit, tie, cufflinks, you know, the whole spiel. The first week I started in the music industry, I think the first or second day I wore a suit for the first 2 days. It's people in t-shirts and jeans and stuff. I was like, okay, this is weird. And so had to pivot to obviously connect in, and it was definitely a cultural change, but it just made me realize how much I want actually that cultural change. I think my finance days had become quite stale personally for me, and so that was an amazing time.
How long were you in that industry for?
Music, I think I was there for about 3 years, 3 to 4 years, and yeah, so much change in that. More change I think I saw in that period, where again digital music was doing really well. When I say digital downloads, and while I'm there, streaming just came out of nowhere and became huge, right? So it was just amazing how quickly things were.
Were there still CD sales at that time, or were they gone by then?
No, I think that there were definitely a lot of the collectors and stuff, but there were CD sales. Interestingly, as streaming came along, you saw, and it sounded like big percentage increases, not big in numbers, but vinyl started coming back. Right.
Yes.
Yep. And I always we joked that the baby boomers had retired and had all this cash to buy the music system they always wanted.
Absolutely. I think
the vinyl they wanted.
The purists always say that the best sound comes from vinyl.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny though. You look at that era that's now got money and they're retiring. They're buying the cars that they wanted as kids but couldn't afford, and you see all these retro cars. I think it was the PT Cruiser that came out. All this retro styling, but they were ugly. And like for people like you and I, we go, "Oh, this is cringe. I don't want that car." But there's a market there for it, and even like the Holden Monaro. I remember that. I'm a car guy, obviously. But that sort of came back, and you see that sort of. That's where that money went.
It's the nostalgia of it, right?
Yeah. And I think I don't think there's an era or a generation that's not going to have some form of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's just interesting that they've gone that far back.
Yeah, I was actually looking at my Spotify year in review, I think last year, and it was still music from when I was growing up.
No, they say, the stats say that I think once your formative years up until around 30, you stop listening. The percentage of new music you listen to, it's like single digit.
The stuff my daughter listens to now, I'm like, what are you doing?
And then you sound like your parents, right? Like, I can only imagine what our kids are going to say about what their kids can listen to. But so from the music industry, obviously you went through a huge period there. From a finance person, what value or impact were you able to have in an industry that was going through so much change and uncertainty?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things. So firstly, an area that is going through that much change, if anything, finance becomes more important, right? Because you, as I said, being a doctor to the business, you're giving that guidance to go, I think this is what's going to work. Now, we're never going to take over and say, this is what you must do. And I think that's where finance tends to overstep its boundaries. But definitely having that right connection with the sales teams, the revenue generating teams, marketing, etc. Go, this is what's working from an ROI perspective. Why do you think that's the case? Let's almost use those assumptions and grow with it. So giving insights and giving information to teams so then they've got more data to make the right decision. Not making the decision for them, but giving them another leg of the table, if you think about it that way. Giving another leg worth of information so they can make a more eyes wide open decision. And one of the key things I then learnt was talking to creatives. My entire career in Chartered was talking to finance teams. Debits and credits was normal conversation with them, and P&L, everyone understood it, and you could just, there were a lot of assumptions you'd make when you'd go into that conversation.
So they were more your black and white, very factual conversation, and creatives that are known for living in the grey. Yeah. How did you adapt your style?
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? That audit conversation, or particularly when you're auditing or building tax returns or whatever, looking in the past. So a lot of the conversation was, what have you done? What's it? Why?
Historical.
Yeah, it was always looking back. Whereas in music, it was, I'm giving information to make a decision on the future. So that was first, from a finance perspective, a big pivot to actually take something I hadn't done much of, to be honest. So talking that language, and then talking it in a way that creatives would understand, because you don't want to. You could make the best analysis ever. You could create amazing analysis, but if it's not used by anyone, it's useless. And so making it simple, and making the message simple, but not simple that it's useless, but actually simple to understand. So giving a complex message in a simple way was definitely one of the key things I got across there.
What about the pushback? Was it very different if people are, I don't think we should do this, or I'm more emotive, I think we need to really do this, because you're sort of saying, well, the data's saying something else. How were you able to challenge in a way that was, convincing? Because I think that's an art that you can learn and apply anywhere. But once you have that skill, it's going to help your career.
Yeah, I think that's probably the other main thing I learned is there will always be pushback. I think if you're doing your role as finance well, and you get that pushback because you're asking those tough questions. You're actually probing and going, okay, asking the uncomfortable stuff. Now, if that pushback results in an aggressive conversation, it doesn't work. And so one of the key things that we spoke about and we were able to get across is, I'm not against you. I'm with you to drive this forward, right? I actually want to make you successful. I'm not giving you this information to hurt you or to make you look bad or anything like that. It's actually to help you make the right decision. This is my opinion. What's your opinion? I'm backing my opinion up with data. Do you have data to back up yours? If so, cool. I'll incorporate your data into mine because I might not have had that insight. So being able to provide that insight, but not be so stuck on, this is my insight, I won't take any new parameters or new learnings on, is key, for both parties, right? And I think that's what was really helpful in having that conversation. We were both able to say, okay, it's not personal. We're actually trying to drive the business growth here. And sometimes going, actually your data is changing my opinion. You are the expert in this. Cool, okay. That's fair. Let's see how that goes. If it doesn't work, fine, let's use that as a learning for the next analysis.
Walk back and have another look.
Yeah.
So from there, you left the industry and you joined Woolworths.
Yeah.
Tell us about your time there.
Yeah, so to go from music, it's kind of go back to a corporate culture at Woolworths. Woolworths is where I say I grew up.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, that's where I had my first people management role. First ASX listed company, so just the level of analysis and conversations and stuff was completely different. And so it was kind of my coming out party, if you will, of okay, this is a real big organization that everyone has heard of and everyone has an opinion. It's fascinating when you do go to your barbecues and stuff on weekends, and when you'd say, I work at Woolies, everyone, what about the trolleys? What are you doing with the shelves? And it's like, okay,
not my department.
Yeah. But it's also cool that everyone has an opinion. So it actually is a really interesting place to play from that angle.
So many household budgets go towards groceries. I think that's huge. That of course people are going to be invested.
Yeah. And you walk through the store, you are in there for maybe an hour or two a week. It's a sizable part of your time. And therefore you will have an opinion.
You're listening to West Talks Tech, where we give you a recruiter's insights into our world, with the aim of helping you reach your career or hiring goals. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Check the West Tech Podcast.
It seems as though it's one of those businesses that's always improving and it's never sitting on its hands.
Yep.
And even someone like myself that just walks in and buys groceries, I'd noticed that it looks like they've introduced AI into the registers, that you put fruit down and it tells you just by looking at it what sort of fruit it is. It's like, you used to have to go and look it up alphabetically. And I thought, how cool was this? Like, these people are thinking of stuff that at the time it's a bit of a punish, but looking back, they go, well, there's a bottleneck there, we can fix that. Yeah. And they're willing to invest in that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I loved about Woolies is just chasing the next thing to help the customer.
Like, perfection's not obtainable, but we're gonna run at it.
Whatever makes that customer journey easier is something that organisation would definitely go at, and that's what I think loved about it.
Okay. And it's at Woolies, I think that technology's come back into your career again because you were effectively the head of finance for the technology.
Yeah, so I joined initially, so I was with Woolworths for 10 years.
Yep.
Or 9 to 10 years. And I joined to support the ERP migration, so the finance of IT.
Yep.
That's how I think about it. So the finance of IT, helping on that massive ERP migration, did well there, then got promoted into other roles as I went along. And then, for the last 5 years, I was the head of finance for technology, which, is where I grew up.
Well, you say grew up, and I can imagine just the role and the size of the P&L and balance sheet. That like, you're talking figures, their phone numbers.
Yeah.
How old were you?
Yeah, I think it was around 27.
Wow.
28 when it was around 27. 28.
To hold that level of responsibility that's pretty visible in that organisation at that age.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that pressure?
It was tough. I think definitely I didn't realise how tough it was till you look back, right, and you go, oh, okay. You only realise the tough periods when you have the good periods and go, okay, that was a tough part of my career, and definitely getting that role. For example, hadn't presented to the board before, and then you're in board meetings.
As a 26, 27-year-old?
Yeah. So you just got to back yourself. So that I did have a lot of that imposter syndrome of do I belong here? And I think what I had was great leaders. I think that's probably one of the strengths, the key strengths of Woolworths, was great leaders who not only challenging you from a work culture perspective, but also helping you develop. And so my CIO at the time is still my mentor. It's still someone I catch up with, and I left the organisation about 2 years ago. It's still someone I catch up with and have conversations with, and have very open, transparent pieces of feedback, etc. from. But having those key mentors, senior leaders, that you can go have a frank conversation with, and they'll conversation where I'm saying, I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I'm doing what I can for the team, or you get those sort of self-doubts, right? Do I belong? That imposter syndrome really clicks in, and the age is a chip on the shoulder you walk in with, and all those thoughts are in your head. It was tough. Yeah,
it's amazing how many highly successful people have imposter syndrome, because they always feel that everybody's more accomplished and has more of a right to be there than them. Yeah. And then in their own right, for other people, they're like, wow, how am I going to keep up with this person? They're fantastic at what they do. And it's very hard to break down.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's a maturity thing or a self-confidence. How do you overcome it?
I think that's the $1 trillion question. But yeah, it was probably, I think, having that support from Woolworths on that journey. So they didn't just throw you into that role. Actually would take you on a management journey, if you will. It was amazing.
How did you, what was your exposure, or what did you learn about the IT or technology world in that role? Obviously, the dollars and cents side, the costs. But what did you learn about how an IT department or function is run for an organisation like that? Yeah,
so I think one of the really cool things is I was part of the IT executive committee. So in their weekly conversations, etc. So part of the IT team. And I, like the IT directors, etc., would joke that I would just insert myself more into the IT conversations than the finance ones, because I love tech. Yeah. And I think that's what, to be honest, made me successful in that role, is I love technology.
So it's a passion.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for you to be invested if you actually like, for example, the music industry. Yeah. You have an interest in music.
Exactly. Yep.
It's a lot easier to be, to really want to be there and go the extra mile.
Yeah.
So from a technology standpoint, understanding how things worked in that organisation and the link between finance and IT, how did your role with AWS come about from there? Yeah,
so one of the key things that I saw, obviously running that IT department and speaking to other organisations, etc., was that cloud spend was obviously starting to pick up. I could see it in our numbers, and a lot of people were complaining about it out in industry and just talking about it, etc. So I'm like, okay, this is a really interesting role. And so I started looking for that. So targeting, I don't target roles per se. I actually target organizations. Because if I believe in the mission of the organization, if I believe in the values, the culture, the role I'll learn. Like I'll actually get and understand what I can do there and what value I can add. But if I don't align to those 3 pillars, I'm not actually going to enjoy my time. Therefore, I'm not going to be as successful in that role, etc. I'd always wanted to work in the tech industry. That was a passion. So when this role came about, and it was a new role in Asia Pacific, I jumped at it.
Yep. How was it explained to you at the time?
Yeah, it was explained quite interestingly. It was our customers need help. They need help in understanding their cloud costs.
Okay.
And can you help them? It's like, yeah, sure. Like that's what I've been doing.
Yep.
I'm in a unique position to speak finance and IT. And if I look back on my career, learning how to speak to customers is what I learned in Chartered, and clients about finance stuff. In music, I learned to talk to non-finance people. And then Woolies brought together that finance and tech piece, so really talking to the tech people, right? So talking to IT people about numbers and budgets and stuff. When, to be honest, their number one focus, as it should be, security, resilience, is the application working? That is actually, in Woolworths, are the checkouts operating? That is much more important than are you under or over budget?
Yes.
That will stop the business operating. So actually learning to talk to the different personas, I realized that this AWS role was building on each one of those skills and actually brought it all together.
So it made perfect sense.
Yeah. It was actually almost... I love the role because it is a culmination of everything I'm building. And I never realized it. And it's funny, right? You talk to your mentors and you only realize how intelligent your mentor is after years where you're like, oh yeah, I get now what you were saying.
It's more
much
about
like your parents.
Yeah, the vision that they have. It's almost like they can see so far ahead.
Exactly.
And then when you get there, you go, oh,
yeah.
How did they know this so far back there? Yeah.
It's like your parents get smarter as you get older.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, ask any 18-year-old, they'll challenge you on that. But but you're right, with the hindsight of wisdom,
exactly.
You know, you can realise what they were saying.
And that's kind of where I landed, and why this role at AWS made sense, because as I was almost picking up experience as I went, my mentors were saying it will come in handy. It's like, oh well, will music ever come in handy in the future? Or like why? Well, it has actually.
Yeah.
Chartered is coming. Like everything has actually been a building block and foundational block to get to where I am today, which is an amazing place to be.
And I think if you drive your own career a certain way, you need to have that level of self-reflection to go, where do I want to go?
Yep.
What do I want to do? What am I good at?
Yep.
And how am I going to make that a career? As opposed to following the same path you think you need to follow.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to be satisfied with what you're doing unless you're happy.
Yeah.
And it works for you. So I think things are changing now. I think a lot more people are more, conscious of how to manage their career.
Yeah.
And how to manage their career for them, not what they think people, society, their family, or their industry or profession says how they need to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd probably be a partner at a chartered firm in town, and
maybe
like if you stayed there and stayed the course, then and then you wouldn't have had all this.
Which is like what I wanted to be, because that was the thing in Chartered.
Yep, absolutely. You wanted to.
Then I wanted to be
top.
CEO, or CFO.
Absolutely.
But it changes, yeah.
So tell me a bit about, your role, a typical day of what you do, and what's if you were to describe your job at a barbecue, what?
Yeah. So I've got I think one of the coolest roles at AWS. So my role is to go help public sector customers in Asia Pacific to sit down and really educate the finance teams on cloud and educate the IT teams on finance and really bridge that gap between those two, and so that they're able to maximize the value that they get on their cloud spend and actually see it as an investment and go, okay, we've done this huge tech transformation by moving to the cloud. Now, how do we realize those benefits? How do we manage it? How do we live in that world?
I mean, you're sort of looking at, as an industry as a whole, the cloud computing, maybe go back 5 years, what did it look like then?
Yeah, so it's one of those industries that just moves so quickly. 5 years ago, we weren't really speaking about AI. Yeah, we were talking about machine learning and stuff, and now AI, right? Like, it is everywhere. Everyone's talking about it, etc. To be honest, just kicked off last year, right? In that period, and you compare to the speed, the resiliency, the security, etc. available on cloud, and it's amazing actually. And again, it just keeps progressing. Every year, every month, there's something new, something cool that comes about. It's like, okay, awesome.
And the industry's still evolving. Like, it's not the finished product yet.
No, I don't. I think it's probably what I love most about technology as a whole. I can't think of an industry that morphs so rapidly. We were buying servers, now we're in cloud. You look at your phones that you've got, they're just unbelievable. So from consumer tech, where we are now, I'm sure if we went back 50 years and showed someone the tech that we have today, just be mind blowing. So I love the gadget side of it, but I think that's what I love about tech. It just never pauses, and there's always something new, something cool to play with.
I know when you were mentioning earlier, we were having a discussion, and you were saying that the attitude towards cloud and versus what it used to be in the old way of managing data, how that's changed.
Yeah, definitely. I think the approach that I've seen a lot of customers take is, we'll just move stuff to cloud. We'll manage. It's a technology transformation, but they don't see it as a cultural transformation, and so they move stuff onto cloud and still keep the same processes of how they used to operate in that on-premise world or that older world.
The old way of working.
Yeah, and that results in probably not getting all the benefits that you could get from cloud. For example, buying a new server. You go through procurement, you've got to get the capital, go buy the server, it ships to you, set it up, blah, blah, blah. It could take about 6 weeks, right? 6 to 8 weeks. With AWS, you just jump online. I need this size computer. 30 seconds and minutes.
Wow.
Got a computer ready to go.
Scalable.
Yeah, exactly. So then if you change your ways of working, what you should be able to do, for example, is because you can just quickly scale something up and try it and turn it back down and go if it doesn't work.
Yep.
You should be doing a lot more proof of concepts today. Like, that should be in the culture, to just try things, because the cost of failure is a lot lower now. And that's a very simple example, but that's the sort of stuff when I talk cultural change, not even talking finance or whatever, the business can actually just try something. Go, actually, you know what, that didn't work.
Do you think it's more of an oversight? People just go, oh, they don't really think of it like that, or it's like, oh, well, we're here now, we're fine. You know,
I don't think it's oversight. I just think it's culturally, it's just what people are used to, and it's just, this is how we've worked, and this is how it's comfortable.
Yep.
I really think it's just people get into a rhythm sometimes, and you need to disrupt yourself. It's the best way to learn is to disrupt yourself. So that's
What, in your opinion, what would be sort of best practice for a CIO or someone that oversees the data for an organisation? What is good management?
Management of the cloud.
Yeah.
I think definitely depends obviously on the size of your cloud spend, but where possible, having I would call it like a cloud business office, right? Someone who, or a team that looks after the cloud. I don't mean the vendor contract and all that sort of stuff, but actually what are we building on here? What is the guard frames, right? The guardrails on how do we ensure that people just aren't randomly turning on stuff? Because yes, it is easy to turn on stuff, and that's a benefit. You do it too much, and your costs will blow out, right? So, what are those rules and guardrails? How do you ensure that you're getting benefit and value for what you're actually delivering? how do you manage it from a financial perspective, aka bringing your finance team on that journey and not just sitting in IT. So actually having a space, a dedicated team that can actually look at it would be an ideal place to be.
If it's a smaller organisation, how can someone get the benefits without having the resources?
Yeah, so I think really connecting in, so if I use AWS as an example, really connecting in with AWS and all the support that it does offer. Just our website is just the sheer amount of information. So when I need to learn something, I go onto our website and just search on, then there's information. So just we make so much information public on this is best practice, etc. Using that.
Yep.
And then ideally, I think it all comes down to education. So educating your team, and I would say the IT team, on how to get those benefits of cloud, how to manage the cloud. And if I bring it down to a cost perspective, educating them to say, yeah, it's really easy to turn something on. But if you leave it running for ages and no one's using it, well, it costs you per minute or per hour. So turn it off.
I think you've 100% hit the nail on the head, though. Then when people look at projects, they talk about the cost to get it in, not the cost to maintain it.
Yeah.
And I think that more needs to be done from an effective management or a leadership standpoint to realise that things are changing. Like a lot of services are now subscription based.
Yeah.
And unless you realise that you're getting the full benefit for what you're paying, you're right. And nearly all of them, you're right. You can scale if it's by seat or the size of the organisation. You can tailor that to suit. And it's easy to budget for because it's generally like you get the invoice monthly.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And you think about those sort of licenses, right? The old licenses were all you can eat. So here's an upfront payment and you can have as many users as you want. And just it's an enterprise license and there you go for software. Now it's per user. So if someone leaves the organization and you don't turn it off, you don't have those mechanisms in place, that governance, that process, you are wasting money. So to your point, we've moved from that upfront managing
buying the physical asset.
Yeah, buying the physical asset or the software license and stuff. So spending a lot of time building that upfront business case to much more focus on managing the ongoing, right? The joke I used to say to people and customers is we spend a lot of time working on the wedding and we didn't really care about the marriage, right? Now it's the marriage is actually a lot more important between finance, procurement, IT. But actually the wedding day, turning something on, there's not a lot of time and effort there, right? So our shift, we've pivoted completely.
Your energy needs to be, on maintaining a good marriage. That's a really good analogy. I like that. What are the risks in getting it wrong? What have you seen?
Well, just blowing out your costs, right?
Okay.
So, and really not getting the benefits of what you signed up for. So one of the key benefits of moving to the cloud is it should be cheaper than what you've been running because the spend will go with demand. You don't let's if I take Christmas period as an example, when sales are high for a lot of organizations, they might have a lot of infrastructure sitting around during quiet periods to ensure that they have enough capacity at that peak, but it's being wasted at other times. With if you don't architect your application to be cloud native, so it can actually the application can flex up and down, well then it's just going to run exactly like it was running on premise, and you are going to be paying 24/7 usage. When in reality, for example, we talk about production, non-production, right? So production is stuff that's running live and customers of yours are using it.
It's accessible, yeah.
Yeah, non-production, test, development. With cloud, for example, your non-production environment, turn it right down during weekends. No one's working on weekends.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
After, if you run it, let's say 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and turn it down. So you go from 24/7 to maybe 5/12. That's a 60% reduction in cost or something.
Wow.
And then so many organizations do Christmas shutdown periods. People are on leave, etc. Turn it down for those 2 weeks. Might half your bill in
wow.
In
It's like switching the lights off at home, isn't it?
Well, it is. It goes back to the first point you raised, tech. is moving to that pay-as-you-go model. And so how do we, manage it that way?
No, they're really good tips. So, Sid, what I'd like to talk about is in terms of engagement. I think it's a fair assessment to say that you're bilingual. You can speak finance, you can speak tech.
I like that.
How could a CIO effectively engage with a CFO to, for the betterment of the organisation? Obviously, we're talking about costs, but some organisations or people see the other as a roadblock.
Yeah.
And I think, working well together, the whole organisation can do so much more.
Yeah.
And go much further in a better way. So how do you feel there'd be some ways to either start the engagement from either end and make that collaboration really effective?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So many customers I tend to talk to, particularly from the tech side, haven't spoken to their finance team, etc. Haven't brought them on in the journey. If the spend isn't high, for whatever reasons, finance may not understand it. So I think, perfect question. I think that the first piece is to actually understand the role of the CFO. In my opinion, the role of the CFO is not to cut spend and just be aggressive.
Pull the guts out of it. Yeah, no.
I think the role of the CFO is to allocate resources, allocate capital, etc., to the area that will drive the best return. That's the role.
Best outcome.
Yeah, the best outcome for the organization. They have a bunch of capital and they distribute it to go, okay, you're actually doing really well and returning, and you've got some projects that will return a lot. Have some more capital.
Yep.
It'll be great for the organization. Where it tends to fall apart is if that CIO-CFO relationship isn't there. The CFO is not going to be able to see IT and say, hey, you're delivering me all these returns. They just see a cost center.
Yep. Or the lights are on.
Yep.
Why is it so expensive?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just an expense line.
Yep.
And so why should I give you more money or something like that, right? It's not going to really drive that conversation.
Well, they're not seeing the value, are they?
And that's the piece. The more the CIO can talk to value, in my opinion, that will enable that conversation with the CFO. So not saying, hey, we put in this application and it's really resilient. And
here's the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, well, because we've put in, I'm going to use, let's say, a BI tool as an example. We've put in this BI tool and not just going, it costs us $1 million a year to run. Here's a BI tool. And because of it, your different teams within the organization, the sales team, marketing, finance, are able to do analysis much quicker. They're able to deep dive, and because of that, they're able to see this data set in a much clearer way and see these insights. And so we've made these business decisions because of it. It's like, okay, that's why I put that tech in.
On the West Tech podcast, we sit down with IT leaders who are doing great things and learn about their journey to help you on yours. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Check the West Tech podcast.
Do you think if a business is looking at spending on a new product, is it worthwhile to get finance involved through the procurement phase? Because I know from a technology standpoint, some IT people are just fixated on a product. I know that product, I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
That might not be the best available in the market for that organisation, but according to that person, no, we need to have that because I know it.
Yeah.
If you engage with a finance person, would you recommend that in the procurement process? Like,
if I take that back a bit and talk strategy on that product, it's quite interesting. You ask, it's a really interesting question to ask IT people. What's your, for a specific area, what's your tech strategy for that area? And if they respond with, our tech strategy is product A, no, that enables your strategy. That's not your strategy. Your strategy might be, I want to increase revenue, or it helps make HR more efficient, reduces the cost of X, Y, Z. That's what I want from my strategy. And I'm going to put in this product to deliver it. And to your point, I see a lot of IT people think of the product
as the strategy.
And once you're in that, you then stop talking value because you're not connecting it back to the strategy you had. That let's say a new product upgrade comes along. Well, I need to do it. Will it deliver more on that strategy? If not, well, maybe we can defer that upgrade for 6 months or a year. So not connecting it to strategy, which should obviously connect to value, you get into that product mindset of, well, I exist to manage this product. There's a really interesting, I can't remember the philosopher's name now, but there's a thing where you ask two bricklayers what they're doing, and one says, I'm building a wall, and the other one says, I'm building a church. He may just be building they may be both just building the same wall of that church, but one actually understands the outcome, the strategy, the purpose. Yep. The other person, it's a wall, right? And I think that's where I see sometimes IT people fall into that trap. Not everyone, but sometimes I tend to see it. I've seen it in different organizations where, the product becomes the strategy. Right?
And sometimes it's tech for tech's sake. It's new and shiny, and we need to have it because it's new and shiny.
Yeah.
Which is what is it going to do?
I fall into that trap.
Everybody does. Why do you think people buy iPhones? They all look the same.
Yeah, exactly.
They haven't looked any different.
It's just it goes back to that needs and wants, right?
Yeah.
What do you actually need versus
I think everybody likes shiny cars and shiny things.
We're human.
We're geared that way. But no, that's a really interesting insight in terms of the purpose, because even from our side in the recruitment world, talking to different IT leaders, some are really, really great at the strategy. And it's funny, the better CIOs or heads of, they're actually finance savvy. They understand P&Ls, they understand drivers, they understand balance sheet, they can talk finance, understand tech, but also too, they've got that technical grounding.
Yes.
So they're becoming so much more well-rounded that they're never out of place anywhere in an organisation, where some people are, hey, I'm great, you tell me what you want and I'll deliver it. And there's a place for both.
Yeah.
But I think, if you want to talk about spending and different organisations' needs, you have to have somebody that knows how to operate to get the best outcome and in that environment. So
I was reading a stat to that point. I can't remember the stat exactly, but the numbers exactly, but a lot of CIOs, a lot of CFOs, finance people, are becoming CIOs because it is against that value realization. That's actually the key, particularly as you move to that world of SaaS, for example, where you're actually managing the contract, right? That's actually the role. You're not building and doing IT work. That's done by the monthly subscription that you pay. So actually your role is a vendor manager, and a contract manager, and getting value from what you've actually delivered. So as we shift to that sort of tech, you see a lot of finance people falling into that CIO role, or CIOs actually reporting into finance. I'm not saying either way is the right way, but you do tend to see that in the industry these days, where finance are getting a lot more involved.
And even the larger organisations, the CIO and the CFO are on the same footing, they're at the same level. And it's amazing how many CIOs don't want to report into finance now, because they've always seen it. Again, there's a stigma about the roadblock, but really good CFOs are going to be their biggest advocate. They just don't realise that yet, because they can see where the organisation's headed, and they understand that the world is changing. Even from an accounting perspective, accountants were always seen as scorekeepers. I'll tell you historically what the results were. I'll tell you what tax we paid. I think with all the automation and technology coming in, like general ledger, all this stuff's going to be, robots are coming, that's all going. So what is accounting going to do as an industry? Well, I think they have to be guiding the business forward. So they're a lot more commercial in the way they think, but they've got that grounding of compliance and understanding that. So I think that's changed so much in the last 10 or 15 years. That I think the sort of accounting, the stereotype isn't going to exist anymore.
No, and you take that IT CFO role as an example. I see that future IT CFO role being a person who's actually more interested in tech, understands the tech, but the expertise they bring to the table is finance. And then the person across the table is an expert in, talks tech, understands tech, but they're an expert in security, so they're the CISO. And then you've got the same thing with the people, the HR lead. They understand technology, they know we need these sort of engineers, but they bring the people experience. And so the CIO is able to get expertise on the different areas, when required, to make a decision. You cannot have a finance for finance, if we call it that way, person in technology these days, I think, because they are going to treat IT as a cost center. Yep.
What would be your advice for them to break down the walls in an organisation? Is it just walk up and stand at the desk and say, do you want to go for a chat, or is there
Do you mean between IT and finance?
Yeah, because it goes both ways.
It
cuts both ways.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think from a finance perspective, if you're interested in tech, just go have a chat to the tech teams, right? There's so many times at Woolies where I would say to the directors or the CIO, etc., can I just be part of this conversation? It's just really cool tech that you're doing. So I want to just learn and be curious and see how that tech works. Nothing to do with finance, but it's just an interesting data point, which may help me when I'm building a business case later. But just being curious. If you are curious in it, go have that chat. I find tech people really love talking about what they do because it is... They're so passionate about it.
They light up.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool area that they're working on. So
if someone has an interest in what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you're going to embrace it. You're going to absolutely come sit down. They're not going to say, "Oh, it doesn't involve you." Just So I think that is a really good way, because you're genuinely interested. Yeah, like, don't feign it.
Yeah, and go in with kind of that music example I was saying. Don't go in combative. I'm going to cut your span.
Guard up,
Yeah, like I'm here to audit you, whatever. I want to help the organisation deliver its strategy. Yeah. I'm interested in this area.
Yep.
How can we work together and go on this journey with you? And it is a journey. You're not just going to one day be mature in this space. And this is a conversation you've got to have over time.
That's really good advice. Industry-wise, where do you see AI impacting the cloud industry now? I mean, obviously, everybody's talking about AI for everything.
Yeah.
What does that look like in the cloud computing industry?
Yeah, so definitely within AWS, we've got a lot of services that you can build your AI on top. So impact in the cloud industry, obviously, we're just going to have to, and we will develop, continue to develop whatever we have, whatever services we have. But helping customers in that end user piece, I think, is where AI really is going to land.
So more customer interface, customer interaction, speed of service.
Yeah, I think we're at such an early stage with it. It's actually quite a fun place to be because just try it. Like I would really recommend people just go, okay, how can I try it? And my Woolly CIO said this, which just really resonated with me. Think about AI not as a tool that will replace you, but as a tool that will be another tool in your workbench. Sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a spanner, and this is just AI, right? So people using AI won't replace people. People using AI will, right?
Yes.
People who again, I'm gonna be the accountant and bring up Excel. When before Excel, I'm sure people, when Excel came around, say, "Oh, it's going to replace jobs and stuff." It's like, no, the ones who got better at using Excel and were guns at using Excel were able to output a lot more for the same time. But it didn't replace that important role that exists.
It changed the way the role was performed.
Yeah, and I think that's it's just what all tech does. And so I think I wouldn't be fearful and say it's going to replace things. That's definitely not where my mindset goes. I think it goes more to embrace it, learn from it, and maybe able to get rid of some of the mundane stuff that you don't want to do in your own role. But use it as a tool. Don't use it, in my opinion, and this is my personal opinion, don't outsource your brain to AI. There is something to be said to the human brain and the creativity that comes from it. But use it, again, like you would any other tool.
Well, that's really good advice. Now I'm going to ask the final question. I'm going to ask everybody that comes on the West Tech podcast this question. Yeah. What advice would you have for your 20-year-old self?
I think don't be fearful of change. I've changed careers almost and gone down different paths. That the mental anguish that I tend to go through when I'm making that change, and am I making the right decision? And every role change, the first 3 months, I just want to go back.
Have I done the right thing?
Yeah.
Is that, what did you put that down to? Is it just
I think just being comfortable,
Yeah.
and being comfortable in being comfortable. It's a complacent place to be for myself in my sort of mindset. So I do, in a way, chase change. I'm also really fearful of it. And so what I tend to do is overanalyze the situation completely, right? To go, okay, is this the right decision? So applying for AWS, well, okay, what will it look like? And really, but I look at some people, particularly a lot of leaders who are able to just completely pivot careers or try something else differently, and oh yeah, it didn't work, and we'll try something else. There's an Amazon principle that I love now, having worked at Amazon and seeing it. We call it one-way and two-way door decisions, right? So a one-way door decision is one that you walk through and you can't come back, or it's very difficult to come back. It's going to be very expensive, or there's a lot of public-facing issues or something. It's a high cost to come back. Whereas two-way door, if the decision doesn't pan out, just walk back. Just
nothing lost.
Yeah, and it's just, I think, using that sort of mindset, working here and just applying it to normal everyday life. Actually, this is a two-way door decision.
What have you got to lose?
Yeah, if it doesn't work, just go back.
It's not a gambler's mindset, though, is it, if you assess it for what it is?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And I think applying that sort of thinking, I wish I had heard of one-way, two-way door decisions back when I was 20, because it would just really calm that brain, that reptile part of the brain down to go, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, the fight or flight, it's okay. Like,
see where it goes.
Yeah.
Let's see where it goes.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work, just go another way.
Especially if you've got the benefit of youth on your side. It's not like, oh, I've gone so far down one path, I can't go back now because, I have age against me.
Yeah.
Whereas you go, no, I've got time. I can go and do that. I can try something else. I can do this.
I had a leader say that exact thing to me in 25. It's like, why are you scared? Like, you're at the infancy of your career. And take where I'm working now, AWS, doing cloud stuff. The cloud, in the way it exists today, didn't really exist when I was in high school. And I'm working in something that really, didn't
wasn't
operate.
an industry when you were at school.
It wasn't an industry. It wasn't as big as it is now, and as critical to just day-to-day life. And you look at that and you go, okay, our kids today, like, we can't, and I look at myself and my 20-year-old self, don't focus on just learning at doing your job really well, but learn those foundational skills as well, right? Talking to people, talking to customers and empathizing, etc. Because those are timeless. But I remember I spent a lot of time becoming a gun at Excel. Yeah.
You're not using it now.
Don't live in Excel. As in, I touch it, but that's a tool where I think there's a AI tool you can jump onto, where a website, and I think for Excel tools, where you go, this is what I want my formula to do, and it'll just give you the formula.
It'll do it, yeah. If only.
Yeah, like, why? I spent time, I think, specializing in skills that weren't long-term.
Yes. But at the time, it wasn't going anywhere. No one saw the end of Excel. We're like, you have to be a macro-level Excel user.
Yeah. Like, I remember trying to teach myself macros and
what if you're a VBA, like your Visual Basic or SQL? Everyone was like, wow. This person,
I genuinely was going down that path. And I did teach myself programming, and I haven't done it for so long, because I don't need it.
What's funny, my kids are in primary school. They're learning programming.
Yeah. Like, it's going to be, like, what will that look like?
I'll end up working for them.
Yeah. And it's just, you said bilingual. It's not a language.
It is.
It actually is a language. And I think one of the key things we can learn from that engineering programming mindset is that trial and error doesn't work. I really love that sort of engineering mindset of, if it doesn't work, use the new data to pivot somewhere else. And that's what I love about Amazon. It's so data-driven in its decisions, etc. Actually, works really well.
Great. Well, I'm sure your 20-year-old self will be very happy with where you're sitting right now. Sid, thanks very much for joining us on the West Tech Podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
Excellent. Hopefully you've got some good insights from Sid. Look out for the next episode of the West Tech Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion today. If you like what you hear, please like, share and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next episode. Check the West Tech Podcast.